Hello, Psych 101 students. Learning objective 10 of module 2 deals with how do drugs affect consciousness. So throughout history and across all cultures, people have discovered that ingesting certain substances can alter their mental state. Psychoactive drugs are mind-altering substances that can change the brain's neurochemistry by activating neurotransmitter systems. So, like if you recently drank some coffee or tea or a caffeinated soda or an energy drink, you may be currently influenced by a drug. Drugs have legitimate medical uses, certainly, but many of them are commonly abused outside of treatment. This is a table from your book on page 121, looking at 4 classes of psychoactive drugs. We've got stimulants, depressants, opioids, and hallucinogens. I'm going to cover each of these. I'm not going to specifically go through this chart, but you should, it is good for you to look back at it as a study aid. So let's take a look at each of these 4 types or classes of psychoactive drugs. And we'll begin with stimulants. They increase nervous system activity, as this is here, in both mental and physical processes. Examples would be, caffeine, nicotine, and then there's some that have, legitimate medical uses, like amphetamines, such as Adderall, Ritalin, or dextroamphetamine. They're all used for ADHD. Other examples are cocaine and methamphetamine or meth. Cocaine causes confidence, alertness, and sociability. Meth, through blocking uptake of dopamine, and actually, all these stimulants they interfere with the reuptake of dopamine. And actually, I guess I should say a little bit more about that. Remember reuptake? I want to go back a little bit when I talked about neurons. Reuptake is the process where a terminal button at the end of an axon, after it releases a neurotransmitter into the synapse. Remember that part of the cleanup process was the reuptake process, where it reabsorbs the chemical, to use it again, and so it kind of cleans out the synapse. Well, if you interfere with the reuptake process, that leaves the chemical in the synapse to continue stimulating, the postsynaptic neuron. So when you interfere with the reuptake process, it leaves more of that chemical in the brain to continue stimulation of other neurons. And this is what stimulants do. They cause more dopamine to remain in the brain. Dopamine has rewarding properties to it. Okay, let's go on. We're going to look a little bit more at meth here. And on the left here, we see a picture of a brain. It's a combination of brain scans from 29 meth addicts. And those red and yellow areas that you see represent the brain damage that typically occurs in the frontal lobes of the brain because of the methamphetamine abuse. This damage may explain the cognitive problems that occur with meth use. And on the right here, we see some before and after pictures. This person was 42 years old when the picture on the left was taken. And at that point, she was not a meth addict. Less than 3 years later, we see the picture on the right after she had been arrested for crimes to support her addiction. And you can see the toll that 3 years of, less than 3 years of addiction on meth had taken to her physically. And this is just, we can just see the physical symptoms, but I'm sure her cognition would have also been damaged at that by that point as well. So that was stimulants. The second class of psychoactive drugs are depressants. Depressants slow down the central nervous system, and they affect both mental and physical processes. They activate GABA receptors, which, remember, GABA is it's the main type of inhibiting neurotransmitter, to slow down activity in the brain. And this is why depressants are experienced as relaxing. In large doses, depressants can cause sleep, which is why they're sometimes referred to as sedatives. Some examples of depressants are anti-anxiety drugs like tranquilizers, hypnotics, which is the technical term for sleeping pills, and certainly alcohol, which is the most widely used depressant. Alcohol activates both GABA and dopamine receptors. So the GABA receptors, when you activate GABA receptors, causes um, it causes a feeling of relaxation. The dopamine receptors, activating those, cause a feeling of reward and also of wanting more. Um, Alcohol interferes with memory, and large doses are associated with more negative moods overall. Just to read this point on the screen here, the overall cost of problem drinking in the U.S., including healthcare expenses and lost productivity due to employee absence, it's estimated at more than 100 billion each year. And uh, alcoholism can cause Korsakoff's syndrome. It's characterized by both severe memory loss and intellectual deterioration, and it also results in a loss of muscle coordination and vision change, and can eventually progress to a coma or death. It is a very serious disorder, and you do often see it with after long-term alcohol use. Okay. Expectations about alcohol's effects are learned very early in life, uh, through observation, particularly within the family system. Um, you learn what to expect from alcohol often by seeing parents or relatives or older siblings. They've seeing how they are affected by it, in a negative or sometimes it seems like a positive way. These expectations can affect behavior while under the influence of alcohol. Often, the way we act under the influence of alcohol, it does depend on what you expect from it. Um, People's expectations can have a profound effect on their experience of any substance. It's our minds are powerful things, and um, this is why we have something. This is why we have something like the placebo effect exists. Is if you expect when you expect to feel a certain way, even taking a placebo can cause you to feel that way. Um, and so if you're expecting alcohol to make you feel better, you'll often kind of interpret that you are feeling better. Or um, okay, let's go. Cross culturally, men consume more alcohol than women, and men are twice as more likely to report binge drinking than women are. Binge drinking refers to having five or more drinks in one sitting. Um, Many people view alcohol as a magic elixir capable of increasing social skills, sexual pleasure, confidence, and power. And you know what? In small doses, it can be beneficial in some of these areas, but in larger doses, it's just an illusion that you're getting, any of these benefits. Um, and this is the problem: is that it there's nothing wrong with small doses of alcohol, occasional small doses of alcohol, and it can actually at times have positive benefits, but often people don't stop with small doses, and any benefits you get disappear as you continue to drink. Okay, those were depressants. Then we have opiates or opioids, is similar terms. They're psychotic drugs. They reduce pain, produce pleasurable feelings. I'm just going to read what's here for now, and then I'll add a little bit. These drugs provide enormous reward value, producing feelings of relaxation, insensitivity to pain, and euphoria. Opiates have been used to relieve pain for hundreds of years, but long-term use is associated with addiction and a number of neurological and cognitive deficits. Um, Opiates act on what's called opiate receptors in the brain. They also activate dopamine receptors, which dopamine receptors are a part of our reward system, and that is what it makes you want more or to crave more of something. And also, the reason it has pain relief is because it also activates endorphins, and we talked about it in an earlier section. We talked about how endorphins help reduce pain in our systems. And the fourth class of drugs are hallucinogens. They alter sensation and perception. They are psychoactive drugs that affect perceptual experiences, and they evoke sensory images even without sensory input. What that means basically is hallucinations. You can hear something even though there's no noise, or see something even though there's not something there. Besides hallucinations, they can also cause delusions, which are false beliefs, believing something that's not true. So maybe you start believing that there's cameras everywhere watching you, or you're in a restaurant, you think everyone's talking about you or watching you, you know, and these delusions are usually uncomfortable. Some examples are MDMA, which is ecstasy, LSD, um, uh, psilocybin mushrooms, peyote, marijuana. Uh, Ecstasy is associated with serotonin release. It may lead to memory impairment. Um, Marijuana activates what's called cannabinoid receptors, which lead to enhanced mental activity, memory impairment, and also altered pain perception. Okay, so those are the four classes of drugs. Let's take a look at how substance use disorder has physical and psychological aspects to it. So we can define substance use disorder as compulsive drug craving and use despite the negative consequences of using the drug. People can develop both a physical dependence and a psychological dependence with substance use disorder. In physical dependence, a person develops a tolerance to the effects of a drug, and as a result, the person has to consume more and more of the drug to prevent the adverse effects of withdrawal. Um, So someone addicted to alcohol might even abuse products that contain a little bit of alcohol, such as cough syrup, just to try to avoid the negative side effects of withdrawal. Speaking of withdrawal, let's go there. It's a physical and psychological effect of addiction. It occurs when a person experiences anxiety, tension, and cravings after discontinuing use of an addictive drug. Um, you can, those are more psychological effects. So, anxiety, feeling anxious, feeling tense, having the cravings. Some physical symptoms of withdrawal often include nausea, chills, body aches, tremors. It's pretty nasty. Um, and this is what leads us to the vicious cycle of developing a substance use disorder. Um, so let me start with what's up there. A factor is the dopamine activity in the limbic system, which underlies the rewarding priorities of taking drugs. As I was mentioning, the dopamine in the limbic system, it is what causes want the wanting of something or the craving of something, and it also it gives you the rewarding properties. So what happens is, somebody starts taking some kind of drug, and initially it will tend to be enjoyable, and so they will seek more of it. They'll experience the rewarding properties of dopamine release in their limbic system. It causes them to want more. They want to experience that again, and so for a while it may seem very pleasurable to take whatever type of drug that they're taking, but they will begin to build up a tolerance. Once they start building up a tolerance, then they will typically start to take higher doses because they want to enjoy those positive effects again, and they're not getting them with the smaller dose they used to. So they start up into taking higher doses, and if they decide to stop after, at that point, what if they've gone up to a certain dosage, they're going to experience those negative withdrawal effects that we're talking about on the last screen, and so it's really a trap. Uh, as somebody develops substance use disorder, the positive effects of the drug that they're taking become less and less over time, and so eventually they're just using the drug in order to avoid the negative withdrawal effects. Um, they have it really provides minimal positive benefits above just a standard normal level of 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 being alive, um, but it's fending off the withdrawal effects, um, and it's so hard for many of them to escape that trap. They don't want to go through that some of those nasty withdrawal effects. Um, what else? Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll just say a little bit more. I mean, people that develop substance use disorder, they're not living the high life, on these drugs. It's, as I said, it's a trap. They're just trying to feel okay, and they will, their worlds will tend to become crumbling around them, uh, losing friendships, losing jobs, losing loved ones, perhaps, um, and yet still taking the drug because it's so painful to go off of it at that point. And no longer is it just some um, enjoyable, pleasurable kind of thing that they do once in a while. It's become a way of life to be on that. So, if you in moments of clarity, most people that have substance use disorder would give anything to go back to never having started on the drug before. So word of caution: do not engage in this vicious cycle. All right, one more slide to finish up this module, and this is about who is likely to become addicted. Only about 5 to 10% of people who use drugs become addicted. Most people have enough self-control that they they don't do it often. They don't do the drugs often enough to start to build up tolerance. They can remain at small doses and spaced apart enough that they don't fall into that trap. There's some evidence for genetic components of addiction, especially alcoholism. So genetic predispositions make some people more or less likely to get addicted. Um, so understanding that genetics never cause an addiction, it makes it more or less likely that you may get addicted. I mean, somebody could have a predisposition, but never touch a drug or never have or never try alcoholism. And so there's no genes that are going to make you get addicted, but once you start engaging in some kind of drug use, because of your genetics, um, there are some people that it becomes much more likely for them to fall into the trap of developing a disorder. So the genetics make you more or less likely to get addicted, but environmental influences like parents and peers and mass media, they also contribute to who does or doesn't become addicted. And keep in mind that addiction doesn't only affect drug users. So, for instance, casinos encourage a psychological dependence on gambling. People suffering from this dependence spend increasing amounts of time and money gambling to the point where their lives are seriously disrupted. And so that one doesn't really have the physical dependence side, but very strong psychological dependence. Okay, and that will do it for Module 2